I watched silently as my parents wrote another check for my brother's Ivy League education, while my community college application sat untouched on the kitchen counter. "We just can't justify the expense," my father had said about my dreams. Years later, as I stood in my graduation gown, the degree they'd dismissed as worthless now worth more than they could have imagined, I realized some investments pay dividends in the most unexpected ways. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The pattern was established long before college applications ever entered the picture. In our household, there was a clear hierarchy of potential, and I had always occupied the lower rungs. My brother Ethan was the golden child, the one whose future gleamed with promise, whose every achievement was celebrated with enthusiasm that bordered on reverence. I was just Alex. Dependable, unremarkable Alex. It wasn't that my parents were cruel or deliberately neglectful. They loved me. I never doubted that. But they loved me in the way one loves a reliable appliance, with appreciation for function rather than admiration for potential. Ethan was possibility. I was practicality. This dynamic manifested in countless ways throughout our childhood. When Ethan expressed interest in competitive swimming at age 9, my parents immediately hired a private coach and rearranged their schedules to accommodate his practices and meets. When I joined the debate team at 12, I was responsible for finding my own rides to tournaments and often missed opportunities because no one was available to drive me. Ethan's room was filled with the latest technology: a high-end computer for schoolwork, gaming systems for recreation, the newest smartphone each year. Mine contained hand-me-downs and practical basics. "Ethan needs these tools for his future," my mother would explain when I questioned the disparity. "You've always been more low maintenance." The annual budget for Ethan's birthday celebrations typically included a catered party with dozens of friends. Mine warranted a homemade cake and perhaps a small gathering at the local pizza place. Christmas followed similar patterns. Ethan's pile of gifts always towered over mine, not just in volume but in significance and expense. I adapted to these circumstances as children do, internalizing the implicit messaging until I no longer questioned it. I became what was expected of me: undemanding, self-sufficient, accustomed to managing with less. I learned to find pride in my resilience rather than resentment in the inequality. By high school, I had constructed an identity around being low maintenance and practical, traits that were less chosen than assigned, but which I wore as armor against disappointment. Ethan, meanwhile, flourished in the greenhouse of parental expectation. He was objectively gifted, intelligent, athletically capable, socially adept. But these natural advantages were exponentially enhanced by the resources consistently directed his way. Private tutoring transformed good grades into exceptional ones. Professional coaching elevated natural athletic ability into collegiate-level skill. Exclusive summer programs provided networking opportunities that opened doors before he even approached them. The disparity in investment became most pronounced during our junior years of high school, when college planning began in earnest. For Ethan, this process commenced with a privately contracted college counselor who specialized in Ivy League admissions. My parents spent $5,000 on this service alone, more than they would ultimately contribute to my entire higher education journey. "We need to maximize Ethan's opportunities," my father explained when I expressed surprise at the expense. "His potential is extraordinary." The unspoken corollary hung in the air between us. Mine was not. The college tours began that spring, an ambitious itinerary of prestigious institutions along the East Coast. My parents used their accumulated vacation days for this pilgrimage, leaving me home alone for 10 days while they escorted Ethan through the hallowed halls of Princeton, Harvard, Yale, and Columbia. "We'll look at some options for you next month," my mother promised upon their return. That exploration ultimately consisted of a single afternoon visiting the local state university and community college. institutions within commuting distance that wouldn't require housing expenses. Throughout Ethan's senior year, our home revolved around his application process. The dining table disappeared beneath essays drafts that my parents reviewed tirelessly each evening. Weekends were dedicated to supplemental application components, shooting, videos for art supplements, polishing research abstracts, refining activity descriptions. My father, an accountant, meticulously researched financial strategies to maximize Ethan's opportunities, speaking with financial advisors about the most efficient ways to liquidate investments when the time came. No expense was spared in the pursuit of Ethan's ideal future. SAT preparation included both group classes and private tutoring. Application fees for 12 universities were paid without hesitation. When Ethan was invited for an interview at Princeton, my parents booked flights and accommodations immediately, treating the trip as a celebratory occasion, rather than merely a component of the application process. I observed all this with a complex mixture of emotions. There was certainly envy. How could there not be when the contrast was so stark? But more prominent was a growing sense of resignation, an acceptance that this disparity wasn't a temporary circumstance, but a fundamental reality of our family dynamic. Ethan warranted investment. I warranted sufficiency. When my own college application season arrived the following year, the difference in approach was even more pronounced than I had anticipated. My first indication came during what I had naively expected to be a planning conversation similar to those Ethan had experienced. "We should discuss your college options," I said one evening after dinner, placing a folder of research on the table. Between us. My father glanced at my mother before responding with careful neutrality. "We've been meaning to talk to you about that, Alex. We need to be realistic about what makes sense financially." What followed was not a strategy session, but a boundary-setting exercise. They explained that having invested significantly in Ethan's education, he had ultimately selected Yale, with annual costs exceeding $70,000, their resources were now considerably constrained. "We just can't justify that kind of expense again," my father said, his tone gentle but firm. "Not when there are perfectly adequate, affordable options available." "But I've been looking at scholarship opportunities," I countered, opening my folder to display the research I'd conducted independently. "And my grades are actually better than Ethan's were." This was objectively true. My GPA was a perfect 4. 0 compared to Ethan's 3.8, though he had taken slightly more AP courses. "Grades aren't everything, honey," my mother said. "Ethan has always had that special something, that spark that opens doors. His Yale degree will set him up for life." "And what about my life?" I asked, the question emerging more sharply than I had intended. My father sighed, his expression a mixture of frustration and resignation. "We're not saying you shouldn't go to college, Alex. We're just saying it needs to be practical. The community college has an excellent transfer program. You could do 2 years there, and then maybe finish at state. That would be a sensible approach." Sensible had long been code in our household for appropriate for Alex, while excellent and exceptional were terms reserved for Ethan's path. I recognized the familiar pattern asserting itself yet again. What my parents couldn't see, what they had never seen, was that beneath my practical exterior lay ambitions as valid and vibrant as my brother's. They had grown so accustomed to categorizing us, Ethan as exceptional, me as adequate, that they could no longer perceive the potential that didn't align with these established narratives. That night, I stood at my bedroom window looking out, at the neighborhood where I'd grown up, feeling the weight of 18 years of prescribed limitations. The college applications I had prepared, to selective programs and emerging technologies that genuinely excited me, suddenly seemed like artifacts from someone else's life, dreams that belonged to a person my family couldn't recognize. But as I watched the distant headlights of cars navigating the darkness, something shifted within me. The familiar resignation gave way to something else. Not quite defiance, but a quiet, steady resolve. If my future would receive no investment from my family, then I would need to become my own investor. I would need to believe in my potential when no one else did. I turned from the window and opened my laptop. The path forward wouldn't resemble Ethan's. There would be no parental guidance, no financial support, no celebration of each step. But perhaps that was fitting. His journey had always been about meeting expectations. Mine would be about exceeding them. The community college application lay completed on my desk, a concession to my parents' expectations. Beside it sat applications for 3 specialized technology programs I'd researched extensively over the past months. Programs with substantial scholarship opportunities, innovative curricula, and direct industry connections. Programs that aligned with my genuine interests in emerging digital systems, not just the path of least financial resistance. My mother knocked lightly before entering my room, her gaze immediately falling on the stack of applications. "I thought we had discussed this, Alex," she said, disappointment evident in her voice. "These private programs are simply not realistic for our situation right now." I met her eyes steadily. "The application fees are my responsibility. I paid for them with my earnings from the tech repair business." The small enterprise I'd built fixing computers and phones for neighbors had been generating modest but consistent income throughout high school. Another example of the self-sufficiency I'd cultivated out of necessity. "It's not just the application fees," she sighed, settling at the edge of my bed. "Even with partial scholarships, these schools would cost tens of thousands per year. After committing to Yale for Ethan, we just can't manage that kind of expense again. You know your father's business has been under pressure since the downtown project fell through." What she didn't acknowledge was that despite financial constraints, they had recently financed a new car for Ethan to use at Yale, to ensure he can make the most of networking opportunities off campus, as my father had explained. "I understand the financial situation," I said carefully. "I'm not expecting the same support Ethan received, but I need to pursue options that align with my goals, not just what's most convenient." "Convenient?" My mother's tone sharpened. "Alex, we're talking about responsibility. The community college program is perfectly adequate for general education requirements. If you're still interested in technology after 2 years, you can explore transfer options." "Adequate," I repeated, the word bitter on my tongue. "That's always been the standard for me, hasn't it? Ethan gets exceptional, I get adequate." Color rose in my mother's cheeks. "That's not fair. Your brother has always had very specific talents and needs. And I don't?" The question hung between us, heavier than I'd intended. "That's not what I meant." She stood, smoothing her skirt in that familiar gesture that signaled her retreat from uncomfortable conversations. "We've always supported your interests, Alex. But part of parenting is helping you make realistic choices." After she left, I sat looking at the applications before me, each representing a different possible future. The community college path was safe, expected, and uninspiring, a continuation of the secondary role I'd always played in my family's narrative. The specialized programs represented risk, potential rejection, and financial uncertainty, but also the possibility of defining my own story on my own terms. The decision crystallized with unexpected clarity. I would submit all the applications. I would pursue every potential scholarship and financial aid option. I would apply for additional, part-time work to cover expenses my parents wouldn't. For the first time, I would prioritize my potential over their perception of it. 2 months later, the acceptance letters began arriving. The community college, predictably, welcomed me to their transfer program. But to my carefully concealed excitement, so did 2 of the specialized technology programs, including the Digital Innovation Institute, a highly selective program known for its cutting-edge approach to emerging technologies. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. More significant than the acceptances were the financial offers. My perfect academic record, combined with thoughtfully crafted essays and detailed documentation of my independent tech repair business, had secured substantial merit scholarships. The most generous offer came from the Digital Innovation Institute, a 75% tuition scholarship for all 4 years, contingent on maintaining a 3.5 GPA. Even with this extraordinary offer, the remaining costs would be significant, beyond what I could manage through part-time work alone. I would need additional resources or, failing that, substantial student loans. The practical path would be accepting the community college offer, with its minimal financial burden. The ambitious path would require sacrifices, financial uncertainty, and likely years of debt repayment. I scheduled a conversation with my parents, preparing my case with the same meticulous attention I'd applied to my scholarship applications. Spreadsheets detailing comparative costs, projected earnings post-graduation, scholarship terms, and financing options filled a folder labeled Educational Investment Analysis. Framing my education in the investment terms my father, the accountant, would appreciate. The conversation did not go as planned. 75% scholarship is impressive, my father acknowledged, reviewing my carefully prepared materials. But the remaining costs are still substantial, especially when you factor in housing, materials, and living expenses. Taking on that level of debt for an unproven program would be irresponsible. The Digital Innovation Institute isn't unproven, I countered, sliding across a document detailing graduate outcomes. 92% of graduates secure positions within 3 months at an average starting salary of $78,000. Their industry partnerships provide direct recruitment pipelines to companies like Vertex Systems and Meridian Technologies. My mother shook her head, unmoved by the statistics. Those numbers assume you'll be in the successful group, Alex. And specialized programs like this have limited application. What if you discover this isn't the right field for you? The subtext was clear. They didn't believe I possessed the exceptional qualities necessary for exceptional outcomes. In their eyes, I remained the practical child, suited for practical paths with predictable, if limited, results. I need to make this decision for myself, I finally said, gathering my documents. I've been offered a significant opportunity that aligns perfectly with my interests and abilities. I understand you can't contribute financially, but I'm asking for your support in other ways. My father's expression softened slightly. We always support you, Alex. We just want to protect you from unnecessary struggle. The community college pathway is safe, I finished for him. But safe isn't always right. Sometimes the right path involves risk. That night, I made my decision. I would accept the Digital Innovation Institute's offer. I would take out modest student loans to cover remaining tuition and apply for campus housing with a work-study component to reduce living expenses. I would continue and expand my tech repair business on weekends to generate additional income. The path would be challenging, far more challenging than Ethan's fully funded Ivy League experience, but it would be mine. When I announced my decision, my parents' reactions were predictably divided. My mother expressed worried disappointment, predicting financial hardship and eventual regret. My father, after his initial frustration, settled into resigned acceptance, offering reluctant assistance with understanding loan terms. Since you're determined to do this, you should at least be fully informed about the obligations you're taking on. Neither of them attended the campus orientation with me, citing work commitments. I made the 3-hour drive alone, navigating both literal and figurative new territory without the parental guidance Ethan had received throughout his college transition. The contrast was stark, but no longer surprising. The Digital Innovation Institute campus was nothing like the ivy-covered buildings of Yale. Housed in a renovated industrial complex at the edge of a mid-sized city, Its aesthetic was deliberately modern and unconventional. Exposed brick walls complemented by glass enclosed, collaborative spaces and state-of-the-art technology labs. It immediately felt right in a way I couldn't articulate. An environment designed for creation and innovation rather than tradition. My assigned housing was a converted loft space, shared with 3 other scholarship students, all from backgrounds different from my upper-middle-class suburban experience, all navigating financial constraints while pursuing ambitious educational goals. Within days, we had formed a tight-knit group bonded by shared challenges and aspirations. My roommate Darius, whose single mother had worked double shifts to help supplement his partial scholarship, became both friend and motivator. "We've got something to prove," he told me during a late-night study session our first week. "Not just to our families or the full-ride kids, but to ourselves. We belong here because we fought to be here." That sentiment echoed in my mind as I called home that weekend, sharing details about classes and campus life with parents who listened politely, but without the enthusiastic engagement they showed toward Ethan's Yale experiences. When my mother asked if I was managing okay financially, the concern in her voice confirmed that she anticipated, perhaps even expected, my eventual failure and return to their recommended path. "I'm doing great, actually," I replied with genuine confidence. "My advanced placement in the algorithmic systems track is opening up some interesting project opportunities." The silence that followed suggested they hadn't expected positive news. Their perception of me, as the practical child requiring practical solutions, had no framework for accommodating excellence or ambition. In their narrative, I was perpetually the supporting character, not the protagonist pursuing an exceptional path. But for the first time, their perception no longer defined my reality. At the Digital Innovation Institute, I wasn't operating within the constraints of their limited expectations. I was being evaluated based on my actual abilities, my genuine contributions, my authentic potential. And in that environment, freed from the shadow of predetermined roles, I found myself thriving in ways that surprised even me. This revelation that I could define my own story independent of the narrative my family had constructed was perhaps the most valuable early lesson of my college experience. More transformative than any specific technological skill was the growing recognition that I had always possessed capability and potential equal to my brothers, just directed toward different domains and expressed through different strengths. As my first semester progressed, this understanding became the foundation for a new self-concept, one built on self-determined value rather than comparative worth. The financial challenges remained real, the workload demanding, the future uncertain. But beneath these practical concerns lay a profound certainty that I had made the right choice, not despite my parents' doubts, but perhaps because of them. Those doubts had inadvertently gifted me something Ethan's fully endorsed path never required: the necessity of absolute commitment to my own vision, independent of external validation. While he navigated Yale with the wind of parental approval at his back, I was learning to sail against the current, developing strengths that would prove invaluable in ways none of us could yet imagine. My first year at the Digital Innovation Institute progressed with a rhythm dictated by necessity and ambition. Weekdays were consumed by intensive coursework that challenged me intellectually in ways my previous education never had. Evenings were split between study sessions and my work-study position in the campus technology lab. Weekends were dedicated to expanding my tech repair business, which I had successfully transplanted to my new location, gradually building a client base among local small businesses and fellow students. Financial constraints remained a constant concern. Unlike Ethan, who received regular care packages and supplemental funds for enrichment activities, I operated within strict budgetary limitations. Each expense required careful consideration. Each unexpected cost necessitated immediate adjustments to maintain solvency. I tracked my finances with precision, developing spreadsheet systems that eventually caught the attention of my financial technology professor, who recommended I share them with struggling classmates. Communication with my parents maintained a predictable pattern. Our weekly calls featured polite inquiries about my studies, followed by detailed updates about Ethan's flourishing Yale experience, his prestigious internship connections, his invitation to exclusive student organizations, his professors' exceptional praise. When I shared my own achievements, a perfect score on a notoriously difficult systems architecture project, selection for a competitive student research position, their responses were measured, as if reserving judgment on accomplishments they couldn't fully evaluate. "That sounds interesting," my mother would say, her tone suggesting she was waiting for eventual confirmation that her practical concerns had been justified. "Are you still managing the financial situation?" The underlying expectation of failure remained consistent, though increasingly irrelevant to my daily reality. Within the Institute's environment, I had discovered a type of recognition entirely different from the conditional approval I had sought at home. Recognition based on demonstrated capability, rather than predetermined expectations. The first, significant turning point arrived midway through my second semester. Professor Hiroshi Nakamura, a pioneer in adaptive interface systems and one of the Institute's most respected faculty members, announced a competitive innovation challenge. Students would develop prototype solutions for real-world technology problems submitted by the Institute's industry partners. The top 3 projects would receive substantial scholarship supplements and, more importantly, direct mentorship from senior engineers at partnering technology firms. The challenge represented an opportunity to address my ongoing financial constraints while potentially opening doors to post-graduation employment. The competition would be fierce. Over 200 students would ultimately submit proposals, but the structured parameters played to my strengths in systematic problem-solving and practical application. I selected a challenge submitted by Vertex Systems, a mid-sized technology firm specializing in healthcare interfaces, developing a more intuitive patient data management system for emergency medical environments. The problem was complex, requiring solutions that balanced security compliance with accessibility under high-pressure conditions. For 6 weeks, I dedicated every available hour outside of required coursework to the project. My social life became non-existent, my sleep schedule erratic. I converted my small desk in our shared apartment into a dedicated workstation, mapping the problem's components across multiple interfaces, user experience flowcharts, security architecture diagrams, implementation timelines. My roommates observed this intensive focus with a mixture of concern and respect. "You're either going to win this thing or collapse trying," Darius commented one morning, finding me still working from the previous evening. When the submission deadline arrived, I delivered a comprehensive proposal that included not just the required technical specifications, but a functioning prototype demonstrating key features. The effort had been exhausting, but energizing. A complete immersion in solving a meaningful problem that aligned perfectly with my capabilities and interests. 2 weeks later, the results were announced. My project had been selected as one of the top 3 innovations, alongside submissions from 2 graduate-level students. Professor Nakamura's feedback described my solution as exemplifying the practical brilliance that defines truly valuable innovation, addressing complex challenges with elegant simplicity. The immediate benefits were substantial: a $10,000 scholarship supplement that significantly reduced my financial pressure, and a guaranteed mentorship with Vertex Systems' lead interface architect. But more meaningful was the validation this recognition provided, not just from professors who had observed my work ethic for months, but from industry professionals evaluating solutions purely on merit. I called my parents immediately after the announcement, unable to contain my excitement about this objective affirmation of my capabilities. "That's wonderful news," my father said, his tone indicating genuine but cautious approval. "10,000 will certainly help with your expenses." "Is this mentorship a paid position?" "It's not about the money," I explained, my enthusiasm dimming slightly at his practical focus. "This is one of the most competitive opportunities at the Institute. Graduate students usually win these challenges, and Vertex Systems is a major industry innovator. Well, it sounds like a nice recognition, my mother added. We're certainly pleased that your hard work is being acknowledged. Their measured response contrasted sharply with their reaction to Ethan's achievements, which typically elicited effusive praise and immediate social sharing. I had witnessed my mother calling relatives within minutes of Ethan's acceptance into a prestigious summer program, but my significant professional recognition warranted only restrained acknowledgement. This disparity would have devastated me a year earlier. Now it registered as a disappointing but increasingly irrelevant data point. My parents' approval had become less crucial as I developed alternative sources of validation, from mentors who recognized my potential, peers who respected my contributions, and most importantly, my own growing confidence in my capabilities. The mentorship with Vertex Systems' lead architect, Dr. Eleanor Chen, proved transformative in unexpected ways. Our weekly sessions quickly evolved from supervised project development to collaborative problem-solving, with Dr. Chen treating me more as a junior colleague than a student requiring instruction. Her approach was simultaneously challenging and affirming, pushing me to refine my solutions while validating my fundamental approach. You have an unusual combination of technical precision and practical insight, she observed during our third session. Many engineers excel at one or the other. The integration is rare and valuable. This specific recognition of my particular strengths that had been overlooked or undervalued in my family context, reinforced my emerging understanding that different environments recognize and value different qualities. The characteristics that had rendered me merely adequate in my parents' evaluation system were considered exceptional in this professional context. Dr. Chen's mentorship extended beyond technical guidance to include career development advice and professional networking opportunities. When Vertex Systems announced a limited summer internship program, she encouraged me to apply despite the position typically being reserved for graduate-level students. Your prototype demonstrated greater practical understanding than most of our graduate applicants, she noted. The selection committee should evaluate candidates based on demonstrated capability, not just academic classification. The application process was rigorous, involving multiple technical assessments and interviews with senior team members. Throughout, I maintained the disciplined focus that had become my hallmark, approaching each evaluation as an opportunity to demonstrate value rather than seek approval. This mindset, so different from my previous orientation toward external validation, produced a calm confidence that several interviewers specifically commented upon. When the internship offer arrived, it included not just the standard stipend, but accommodations in the company's residential facilities, a significant financial benefit that would allow me to focus exclusively on the opportunity rather than balancing multiple income sources. The timing aligned perfectly with my financial needs, providing a stable foundation for the upcoming academic year while delivering invaluable professional experience. I shared this development with my parents during our next scheduled call, presenting it within the context of financial stability rather than exceptional achievement, having learned that framing my successes in practical terms generated more positive responses than emphasizing their distinctive nature. An internship sounds like a good summer opportunity, my father responded, his tone suggesting pleasant surprise. And the housing component is certainly helpful. Is Vertex a large company? Mid-sized but growing, I explained. They're considered one of the most innovative firms in healthcare interface development. Their adaptive systems are used in major medical centers nationwide. My mother's curiosity seemed piqued for the first time. Healthcare interfaces? I didn't realize your program included medical applications. Digital innovation extends across all sectors, I explained, recognizing her interest as an opening to help them better understand my field. The project that won the scholarship focused on emergency medical data systems, creating interfaces that allow medical personnel to access critical patient information more efficiently during emergencies. This tangible application of my work, its connection to meaningful real-world impact, seemed to register with them in a way abstract technological concepts had not. For the first time, I sensed genuine interest rather than polite acknowledgement. It was a small shift, but significant in suggesting that their perception might be more malleable than I had assumed. As spring semester concluded, the contrast between my brother's college experience and my own remained stark but increasingly irrelevant. While Ethan received a new laptop as a semester completion gift, despite average academic performance, I purchased necessary equipment upgrades with my scholarship funds, each acquisition representing earned recognition rather than entitled support. This fundamental difference between paths smoothed by external support and those forged through individual determination was crystallizing into a defining feature of my professional identity. The challenges I had navigated independently, from financial constraints to skeptical family expectations, were developing resilience and self-reliance that would prove invaluable in ways I couldn't yet fully appreciate. The summer internship at Vertex Systems marked the beginning of a significant acceleration in my professional development. Immersed in the environment that valued exactly the qualities I possessed: systematic problem-solving, practical innovation, meticulous attention to implementation, I thrived in ways that transformed both my skills and my self-perception. Each successfully completed project, each positive evaluation from senior team members, each complex problem solved reinforced the emerging truth. I wasn't just adequate or sufficient. In the right context with the right challenges, I was exceptional. This revelation wasn't about comparative worth or vindication against familial underestimation. It was about authentic alignment, discovering environments and challenges that resonated with my particular strengths and allowed me to create genuine value. As I prepared to return for my sophomore year, this understanding had evolved from intellectual concept to lived experience, providing a foundation of confidence no external validation could replicate or external doubt could undermine. The path ahead remained challenging. Financial constraints hadn't disappeared, academic demands would intensify, and my family's perception would evolve slowly, if at all. But these challenges no longer represented potential confirmation of predetermined limitations. They were simply obstacles to navigate with the growing toolkit of capabilities I was developing through necessity and determination. The investment I had made in myself, the one my parents had been unwilling to make, was already yielding returns they had never imagined possible, and this was just the beginning. My sophomore year at the Digital Innovation Institute began with a fundamentally different orientation than my freshman experience. The financial pressure had eased significantly, thanks to the scholarship supplement and summer earnings from Vertex Systems. More importantly, my academic confidence had solidified into a quiet certainty about my capabilities and direction. Registration day highlighted this evolution perfectly. While other students navigated course selections with uncertain deliberation, I approached the process with strategic precision, selecting advanced offerings that built systematically toward my emerging specialization in adaptive interface systems. When a registration advisor suggested I might find the accelerated course load challenging, I respectfully explained my rationale with a clarity that prompted her to not only approve my selections, but also recommend me for the Institute's specialized research track, a program typically reserved for high-performing juniors and seniors. Your summer work at Vertex Systems indicates readiness for more advanced research integration, she noted, reviewing my updated transcript. Professor Nakamura has already flagged your file for consideration. This recognition reflected a fundamental shift in how I was perceived within the academic environment. I was no longer viewed as a scholarship student managing against financial constraints, but as an emerging talent worthy of accelerated opportunities. This perception aligned with my internal reality in ways my family's view never had, creating a positive feedback loop that fueled further growth and achievement. The specialized research track acceptance arrived 2 weeks into the semester, offering access to advanced research facilities and faculty mentorship in exchange for contribution to ongoing innovation projects. The opportunity represented both professional advancement and additional financial support through the associated stipend. More significantly, it placed me in direct collaboration with senior students and faculty engaged in cutting-edge development, an environment of elevated expectations and extraordinary learning potential. My first assigned research project involved collaboration with Dr. Nakamura's team on an adaptive interface system for users with varying cognitive processing capacities, technology that could automatically adjust complexity, information density, and interaction methods based on real-time user response patterns. The work was enormously challenging, requiring integration of complex data processing with intuitive human-centered design principles. It pushed me beyond comfortable competencies into new territories of learning and application. What surprised me most during this period wasn't the intellectual challenge, which I had anticipated and welcomed, but the social dynamics that emerged within the research team. Despite being the youngest member by several years, my perspectives were actively sought and seriously considered. My systematic approach to problem-solving and practical implementation insights became valued contributions rather than overlooked qualities. "You bring a refreshing pragmatism to theoretical discussions," Dr. Nakamura observed during a team review session. "Your focus on how these systems will function in real-world contexts helps ground our innovation in practical value." This specific appreciation for qualities that had been dismissed as merely adequate in my family context continued to reinforce my understanding of how environments differently value particular strengths. The characteristics my parents had, implicitly ranked below my brother's more conventional achievements, were precisely what distinguished my contributions in this professional setting. My weekly calls home maintained their established pattern, though with subtle evolutions. My parents continued providing detailed updates about Ethan's Yale experience, now focused on his junior year activities and emerging post-graduation prospects. When I shared developments about my research position, their responses remained measured but increasingly curious, especially when I explained potential applications in healthcare and education. "These adaptive interfaces you're developing," my father asked during one conversation, "how exactly would they work in practical settings?" His genuine interest represented small but meaningful progress in their perception of my path, while they still didn't fully understand or appreciate the significance of my field. They were beginning to recognize its legitimate value beyond abstract technological interest. The most significant development that fall came unexpectedly through my continued relationship with Vertex Systems. Dr. Chen had maintained contact after my summer internship, occasionally sending challenging problems for my consideration or articles relevant to my research interests. In late October, she reached out with a different purpose. "Vertex is initiating a new development project focused on adaptive interface implementation in educational contexts," she explained during our video call. "Your unique perspective would be valuable to our initial architectural planning. Would you consider a consulting arrangement? The commitment would be approximately 10 hours weekly, conducted remotely to accommodate your academic schedule." The opportunity was unprecedented, a paid professional consulting position while still an undergraduate student. The compensation offered exceeded what most graduates commanded in entry-level positions, fundamentally transforming my financial situation from carefully managed constraint to unexpected abundance. More valuable than the financial component was the professional recognition this represented, acknowledgement that my capabilities warranted compensation at professional rather than student rates. I accepted immediately, recognizing this as a pivotal opportunity to integrate academic learning with professional application. The arrangement required careful time management to balance alongside my coursework and research obligations. But the synergies between these commitments created efficiencies that made the combination surprisingly manageable. My first consulting payment arrived in November, a sum that exceeded my monthly student budget by a considerable margin. I transferred a portion to my emergency savings fund, allocated resources for necessary technology upgrades, and then made a decision that represented a significant psychological milestone. I would begin repaying my student loans immediately, rather than waiting until after graduation, as the terms required. This choice wasn't financially necessary or even conventionally advisable, given the loan's favorable interest rates. Its significance was symbolic rather than practical, a tangible declaration of self-sufficiency and forward momentum. Each early payment represented concrete progress toward complete independence, gradually eliminating the one remaining aspect of my education that could be characterized as a burden rather than an investment. As the fall semester concluded, I received an unexpected message from my academic advisor requesting a meeting to discuss emerging opportunities. The conversation that followed presented another acceleration in my academic trajectory. "Your performance in both coursework and research contexts has been exceptional," she began, reviewing my updated transcript. "Dr. Nakamura and the research faculty have identified you as a candidate for our accelerated completion program." The program she described would allow me to complete my undergraduate requirements on an expedited timeline while simultaneously beginning graduate-level work. Instead of the traditional 4-year undergraduate path followed by separate graduate studies, I could potentially complete both bachelor's and master's degrees within a total of 4 years through intensive course loading and integrated research application. "This path is demanding," she cautioned, "and not suitable for most students. But your combination of academic performance, research integration, and professional application suggests you would thrive with these challenges rather than merely survive them." The opportunity aligned perfectly with my emerging professional goals while offering significant financial efficiency, essentially providing graduate education at undergraduate costs through the combined program structure. After carefully reviewing the requirements and consulting with both Dr. Nakamura and Dr. Chen for their professional perspectives, I committed to the accelerated path beginning the following semester. When I shared this development during our holiday visit home, my first extended family time since beginning college, my parents' reaction revealed their evolving but still limited understanding of my achievements. "Finishing early would certainly help with the overall expense," my father observed, focusing predictably on the financial implications. "Though I wonder if rushing through your education might limit the experience." "It's not about finishing quickly," I explained patiently. "It's about being recognized as capable of advanced work on an accelerated timeline. The program integrates undergraduate completion with graduate commencement. It's meant for students, demonstrating readiness for more advanced material." My mother looked confused. "Graduate school? But I thought you were focused on finding a job after graduation." Her question highlighted how fundamentally they had miscategorized my educational path, assuming I pursued a terminal undergraduate degree focused on immediate employment rather than a comprehensive academic foundation for advanced professional positioning. This misalignment between their perception and my reality had once been frustrating. Now it was simply an artifact of their limited understanding of my field and potential. "I'll actually be working while completing the graduate components," I explained. "Vertex Systems has offered to extend my consulting arrangement through the coming year, with potential for expanded responsibilities." This concrete professional validation registered more clearly than the academic recognition. My father's expression shifted from polite interest to genuine attention. "Vertex Systems, that's the healthcare technology firm, correct? They're offering you a position while you're still in school?" "A consulting arrangement," I clarified, "but yes, with compensation at professional rather than internship rates." For the first time, I detected something beyond measured acknowledgement in their response, a subtle recalibration of how they categorized my path and prospects. The consulting position provided a framework they could understand and evaluate within their conventional metrics of success. While they might not fully appreciate the academic recognitions or research opportunities, tangible professional interest from an established company represented validation they recognized. the contrast with their treatment of Ethan remained evident throughout the holiday visit. His Yale experience continued to command celebratory attention, with relatives updated on his every achievement and activity. But I noticed a new element in these conversations: occasional references to my technology consulting work, inserted by my parents, brief acknowledgments that positioned my path as legitimate if not fully understood. This slight shift represented progress, but its external validation remained fundamentally irrelevant to my internal certainty. The holiday visit provided valuable perspective on how far I had traveled, not just academically or professionally, but psychologically. I no longer craved the approval once desperately sought. I no longer measured my worth through their recognition. As I prepared to return for the spring semester and the commencement of my accelerated program, I reflected on the extraordinary distance traveled in 18 months. I had arrived at the Digital Innovation Institute fighting for validation of my potential. I was returning as someone whose capabilities had been recognized and valued by the metrics that mattered professionally. I had begun with financial constraints that threatened my educational continuity. I was continuing with financial stability derived from earned recognition rather than parental support. Most significantly, I had transformed from someone seeking external confirmation of worth to someone guided by internal certainty of value. The journey ahead remained challenging. The accelerated program would demand extraordinary focus and effort. The expanding professional responsibilities would require continuous growth and adaptation. But these challenges now represented opportunities for advancement rather than obstacles to survival. The investment I had made in myself, against doubt, against financial constraint, against limited expectations, was yielding returns beyond measurable metrics. It was producing not just professional progress but personal transformation. The evolution from defined by others to self-determining, from seeking approval to creating value. And this internal transformation, more than any external achievement, represented the true return on my investment. The accelerated program transformed my educational experience from challenging to intensely demanding. Each week required precise allocation of time and energy, balancing advanced undergraduate requirements, introductory graduate coursework, ongoing research obligations, and professional consulting responsibilities. The schedule left minimal room for adjustment, each commitment interlinked with others in a complex system requiring continuous management. What surprised me most wasn't the workload itself, but my response to it. Rather than feeling overwhelmed, I discovered an unexpected energy in this comprehensive immersion. The integration of academic theory with research application and professional implementation created powerful learning synergies. Concepts explored in morning lectures became afternoon research questions and evening consulting solutions in a continuous cycle of learning and application. You've developed an unusual capacity for integrated knowledge transfer, Dr. Nakamura observed during a research review session. Most students compartmentalize their learning. You're creating adaptive connections across contexts that accelerate your development in all areas simultaneously. This observation highlighted something I was only beginning to recognize myself. The demanding schedule wasn't just testing my time management, it was developing a distinctive professional capability. The necessity of working across multiple contexts was cultivating an integrative perspective increasingly valued in our field. My expanding responsibilities at Vertex Systems reflected this developing strength. What had begun as limited consulting on specific educational interface components had evolved into broader architectural involvement across multiple application domains. By early spring, I was participating in senior planning meetings, contributing perspective on implementation challenges across healthcare, educational, and commercial applications. Your experience moving between academic theory and practical application gives you insight most of our senior developers lack, Dr. Chen noted during my performance review. You anticipate integration problems they often overlook until implementation stages. This recognition manifested in a formal expansion of my consulting agreement, increasing both my compensation and responsibility levels. The new arrangement included equity options, a small but meaningful ownership stake in the company's future growth that represented extraordinary confidence in my long-term value to the organization. These professional developments coincided with significant academic recognition. My research contributions to the adaptive interface system had progressed from supportive implementation to innovative design, with several of my architectural solutions integrated into the core development framework. This work led to co-authorship on a paper accepted for presentation at the International Conference on Adaptive Technologies, an unusual recognition for an undergraduate, even within the accelerated program structure. Your name on this publication establishes early professional credibility, Dr. Nakamura explained when sharing the acceptance notification. This creates foundation for your academic reputation well before graduation. The conference would be held in Singapore during the summer, my first international professional opportunity, with travel expenses covered through the research program. The timing aligned perfectly with a parallel development at Vertex Systems, which was establishing a new development office in the same region with plans for expanded Asian market presence. Your conference participation presents a convenient opportunity, Dr. Chen suggested during our weekly coordination call. We'd value your contribution to our initial team orientation if you could extend your stay by 2 weeks. We'd cover additional accommodations and provide appropriate compensation for the consulting extension. This confluence of academic and professional opportunities represented another acceleration in my trajectory, establishing international experience and cross-cultural professional collaboration well before such exposures would normally occur. The cumulative effect was a progressive compression of traditional professional development timelines, with experiences typically associated with mid-career positions becoming accessible during my education. My spring semester grades reflected the success of this integrated approach. Perfect marks across both undergraduate and graduate coursework, despite the intensified schedule. The academic momentum ensured I would complete undergraduate requirements. By December, allowing full transition to graduate studies for my final 3 semesters, while maintaining the continuous professional integration through Vertex Systems. These developments created a practical dilemma I had not anticipated. My financial situation had evolved from carefully managed constraint to unexpected surplus. Between the expanded consulting compensation, research stipends, and remaining scholarship funds, my income significantly exceeded educational and living expenses for the first time. After establishing appropriate emergency reserves, I faced decisions about allocation of remaining resources. The obvious conventional choice would be accelerated student loan repayment, eliminating the modest debt I had accepted when beginning my educational journey. This approach offered clear financial benefits and aligned with my established self-sufficiency priorities. But another possibility had begun forming in my thoughts, one that represented a more meaningful statement of my evolving values and perspective. I decided to establish a modest scholarship fund at the Digital Innovation Institute, specifically designed for students facing similar circumstances to my own, those with demonstrated capability but limited financial support. The Emerging Innovators grant would provide supplemental funding for students showing exceptional promise, but requiring additional resources to fully develop their potential. Working with the Institute's Advancement Office, I structured the scholarship to begin modestly with my initial contribution while establishing a framework for ongoing expansion through future contributions. The Institute agreed to waive administrative fees in recognition of the scholarship's alignment with their mission of developing talent, regardless of financial circumstances. This is an extraordinary commitment from a current student, the advancement director commented during our planning meeting. Most donor relationships develop years after graduation, not during the educational experience itself. I explained, my motivation simply, I benefited from others recognizing potential when traditional support systems didn't. Creating similar opportunities for future students extends that investment forward. This decision represented more than financial planning. It was a concrete manifestation of how fundamentally my perspective had evolved. I had moved from focusing on proving my worth within my family's limited expectations to actively creating systems that recognized and developed potential in others. The scholarship established a tangible legacy that would continue growing through my ongoing contributions, potentially impacting dozens of students over coming years. The summer brought the anticipated international experiences, first the technology conference in Singapore, where our research presentation received significant attention from both academic and commercial participants, then the extended consulting engagement with Vertex Systems' new regional development team. The combined experience provided invaluable exposure to global perspectives on technology implementation across diverse cultural contexts, insights increasingly valuable in an interconnected development ecosystem. Upon returning for my final year of studies, I received unexpected news. The Institute's annual Innovation Showcase had selected my adaptive interface work for their featured presentation to industry partners and potential employers. This high-visibility opportunity would place my research before executives and technical directors from leading technology firms during their annual recruitment and partnership development event. This positioning typically results in multiple employment offers for featured students, my advisor explained. The showcase creates competitive interest that significantly enhances post-graduation options. While the professional opportunities associated with this recognition were certainly valuable, the most meaningful aspect was more personal. For the first time, my parents expressed interest in attending an academic event associated with my education. I saw a significant departure from their previous limited engagement. "This showcase sounds quite impressive," my father commented during our monthly call. "Your mother and I thought we might attend if that's appropriate. We'd like to better understand what you've been working on." Their interest, coming after years of minimal engagement with my educational journey, produced complex emotions. Part of me welcomed this belated validation, appreciating their attempt to connect with my achievements. Another part recognized the fundamental asymmetry in our relationship. Their attention now sought after becoming ultimately unnecessary. Their approval offered only after external validation had confirmed my value by their conventional metrics. I accepted their interest without resentment, recognizing it as a natural evolution in their understanding rather than a calculated change. Their perception had always been limited by conventional definitions of success and achievement. The visibility of my work had simply reached thresholds they could recognize within those traditional frameworks. "The showcase is open to family members," I confirmed. "It would be great to have you there." As preparations for the Innovation Showcase intensified, I received another unexpected communication, this one from Ethan. My brother had rarely initiated contact throughout our college experiences, our interactions limited primarily to brief exchanges during holiday visits. His message expressed curious interest in my technology work, prompted apparently by our parents' mentions of my upcoming presentation. "Dad says you're doing something with medical interfaces," he wrote. "Sounds interesting. I'm considering healthcare consulting after graduation. Might be some overlap with your tech stuff." His casual inquiry reflected the persistent gap in understanding. Tech stuff scarcely captured the sophisticated adaptive systems architecture I had helped develop, but also indicated nascent recognition that my path might hold legitimate, professional value. I responded with a concise but welcoming explanation of my work, emphasizing applications relevant to his potential healthcare interests. This exchange, minor as it seemed, highlighted another dimension of my journey. Just as I had moved beyond needing parental validation, I had similarly transcended the comparative framework that had defined our sibling relationship. I could engage with Ethan not as the overlooked younger sibling seeking recognition, but as a professional with distinct expertise offering collegial perspective. The Innovation Showcase exceeded all expectations. My presentation, demonstrating adaptive interface systems responding in real time to user engagement patterns, generated immediate interest from multiple industry partners. Representatives from leading technology firms requested follow-up meetings, with 3 extending preliminary employment discussions before the event concluded. Most surprising was the reaction from my parents, who attended with visible but contained pride. Watching their expressions as industry leaders engaged enthusiastically with my work, I recognized a fundamental shift in their perception. Not just intellectual acknowledgement, but emotional recognition that my path represented legitimate excellence rather than practical compromise. "We had no idea your work had such significant applications," my father admitted during the reception following the presentations. "The healthcare implementations are particularly impressive. Several companies seem quite interested in your technology," my mother added, gesturing toward representatives still gathered around my demonstration station. "Are these potential employers?" Their questions revealed continuing emphasis on conventional metrics, employment opportunities, and practical applications, but represented genuine engagement with my achievements on their own terms. They were beginning to see my work through its actual value rather than predetermined expectations, a significant evolution in their understanding. The most meaningful moment came unexpectedly as we prepared to leave the event. My father, typically reserved with personal observations, paused briefly before commenting. "You know, Alex, we may have underestimated the potential of your educational choice. It seems you found exactly the right path for your particular talents." This simple acknowledgement, understated but sincere, represented more than approval. It suggested recognition of a fundamental truth I had discovered through my journey: that distinctive talents find their greatest expression in environments that value their specific qualities, rather than generic measures of achievement. My parents were beginning to understand that my success wasn't occurring despite their withheld support, but through leveraging strengths they had never fully recognized or valued. As my final semester commenced, the trajectory established through previous years continued accelerating. Multiple employment offers arrived following the showcase, including an extraordinary proposal from Vertex Systems, a leadership position heading their adaptive interface division, with compensation and responsibility levels typically reserved for professionals with decades of experience. "Your combined academic foundation and practical implementation experience creates a uniquely valuable profile," Dr. Chen explained when presenting the offer. "We're essentially consolidating development stages that traditionally require years of progressive advancement." The position would begin immediately after graduation, allowing seamless transition from academic completion to professional leadership, while accommodating completion of final graduate requirements. The compensation package included substantial equity components that would potentially create significant financial opportunity as the company continued its expansion into global markets. What made this opportunity particularly meaningful wasn't just its objective value, but how perfectly it aligned with my authentic interests and capabilities. Unlike positions that would have required compromising either theoretical development or practical application, this role integrated both dimensions, allowing continued research collaboration while directing implementation across diverse application contexts. As I considered this offer alongside others from prominent technology firms, I reflected on the extraordinary distance traveled from my initial college decision. I had begun with limited resources and against significant doubt, fighting for opportunity that others received automatically. I had navigated financial constraints that required continuous management and creative solution finding. I had built professional credibility without the automatic networks and assumptions of capability that accompanied prestigious institutional affiliations. These challenges, rather than limiting my development, had become catalysts for accelerated growth and distinctive capability. The necessity of self-advocacy had developed unusually strong communication skills. Financial constraints had cultivated resourcefulness and strategic thinking. The absence of assumed credibility had motivated Extraordinary demonstration of concrete value creation. The investment I had made in myself, the one my parents had been unwilling to make initially, had yielded returns beyond any traditional educational pathway, creating opportunities they had never imagined possible for me. More importantly, it had developed an internal foundation of self-knowledge and confidence that no external validation could provide or external doubt could undermine. As I prepared for the transition from education to professional leadership, I recognized that the most valuable outcome of my journey wasn't the external recognition or opportunities, but the internal transformation from seeking validation to creating value, from measuring worth through others' perceptions to establishing impact through authentic contribution. This evolution represented the true return on investment, one that would continue generating dividends throughout my personal and professional life, independent of changing circumstances or external evaluation. The degree that my parents had, once dismissed as wasteful, had indeed changed everything, not just through the opportunities it created, but through the person it had helped me become. As graduation approached, I faced a decision point that would define the next phase of my professional journey. The multiple employment offers represented not just different companies, but different possible trajectories, each with unique advantages and growth opportunities. After careful analysis and consultation with trusted mentors, I accepted Vertex Systems' leadership proposal, recognizing its unique alignment with both my immediate capabilities and long-term aspirations. The transition from student to executive leader occurred with remarkable efficiency. My final semester included structured integration into the company's leadership ecosystem, with progressive responsibility allocation that ensured operational continuity upon formal role commencement. By graduation day, I had already begun directing adaptive interface development across multiple product lines, leveraging academic knowledge within practical implementation contexts. The graduation ceremony itself represented a meaningful milestone, though perhaps not in ways I had anticipated years earlier. When I had begun my educational journey, such moments had carried implicit significance as opportunities for familial validation, chances to prove my worth within their established value system. Now, the ceremony's importance stemmed from its recognition of genuine accomplishment independent of others' perceptions. My parents attended with evident pride that seemed both sincere and slightly disoriented, an emotional response to achievements that exceeded their conceptual framework. They struggled to contextualize my position within familiar reference points, their understanding hampered by limited technological literacy and conventional career expectations. "So you'll be managing other engineers?" my father asked during the celebration dinner following the ceremony. "At your age, that's quite unusual." "The role involves both technical direction and team leadership," I explained, recognizing their need for accessible analogies. "It's similar to becoming a department head while maintaining hands-on involvement with core development processes." This professional translation helped bridge their perception gap, allowing them to position my achievement within recognizable frameworks. Their congratulations remained somewhat tentative, genuine but cautious, as if still reconciling this outcome with their long-held assumptions about my potential and appropriate path. The contrast with Ethan's situation added another dimension to this recalibration process. My brother had graduated from Yale the previous spring with strong academic credentials, but uncertain professional direction. After exploring several options, he had accepted an entry-level position with a management consulting firm, a respectable beginning that aligned with conventional expectations for prestigious university graduates. What neither my parents nor Ethan had anticipated was the rapidly evolving economic landscape that was fundamentally disrupting traditional career trajectories. The consulting industry was experiencing significant contraction as companies increasingly prioritized specialized technical expertise over generalized business analysis. 6 months into his position, Ethan faced an uncomfortable reality. His prestigious degree had secured initial employment but provided limited distinctive value in an increasingly specialized professional ecosystem. This situation created an unexpected reversal in our traditional family dynamic. During a rare direct conversation, Ethan expressed both professional frustration and genuine curiosity about my career development. The partners keep talking about digital transformation and technological integration, but none of them understand the actual systems, he confided during a video call. They're trying to advise clients on implementing technology they can't explain beyond superficial descriptions. His observations highlighted a fundamental shift occurring across industries, one that privileged specific technical capabilities over generalized credentials. The practical knowledge and implementation experience I had developed through my integrated education and professional experience had positioned me advantageously within this evolving landscape. Would your company have any interest in consulting partnerships? Ethan asked, his question reflecting both professional interest and personal recalibration. I understand the business implementation challenges, but need partners who can address the technological components. This inquiry represented a remarkable evolution in our relationship, from hierarchical positioning within familial expectations to collaborative exploration of complementary professional capabilities. I recognized both the business opportunity and personal significance embedded in this potential collaboration. Vertex is actually developing a client implementation division focused exactly on bridging technical capabilities with organizational integration, I explained. I'd be happy to connect you with our partnership development team. This exchange initiated what would become a productive professional relationship that benefited both our careers while restructuring our personal dynamic. Ethan's business implementation perspective complemented my technical architecture expertise, creating valuable collaborative opportunities that neither could have developed independently. The first joint project emerged 3 months later. A comprehensive healthcare administration system for a major hospital network, requiring both sophisticated adaptive interfaces and complex organizational implementation strategies. The collaboration leveraged our complementary expertise while establishing new relationships between our respective organizations. Your brother has exceptional insight into organizational adoption challenges, my implementation director commented after our initial planning session. His perspective helps translate our technical capabilities into practical organizational solutions. Similarly, Ethan reported that his firm increasingly valued his access to sophisticated technical expertise. Having direct connection to cutting-edge implementation capabilities gives me credibility the other associates lack, he explained during a project review. The partners are finally recognizing the value of specialized technological relationships. This professional collaboration inevitably influenced our personal relationship, transforming it from competitive positioning within familial hierarchies to mutual respect for distinctive capabilities. We began communicating regularly about industry developments, sharing insights from our respective professional contexts, and identifying potential collaborative opportunities that leveraged our complementary strengths. This evolution profoundly affected our parents' perception as well. Observing their children's professional collaboration challenged their long-established tendency toward comparative evaluation, forcing recognition that different types of capability could create equivalent value within appropriate contexts. They began referring to our different strengths, rather than making implicit value judgments, a subtle but significant shift in their foundational understanding. My professional responsibilities at Vertex expanded rapidly during this period. What had begun as leadership of the Adaptive Interface Division evolved to include broader product strategy development across the company's expanding technology ecosystem. This advancement reflected both demonstrated capability and the accelerating market demand for adaptive technology integration across diverse application domains. Your architectural vision has applications well beyond our current implementation contexts, the company's CEO explained during my first-year performance review. We'd like you to lead development of our comprehensive technology roadmap for the next 3-year cycle. This elevated responsibility included significant equity expansion and board-level strategic involvement, extraordinary progression for someone less than 2 years post-graduation. The opportunity represented not just professional advancement, but expanded impact potential, the ability to influence technological development directions with widespread implementation implications. The most meaningful aspect of this progression wasn't the conventional metrics of success, compensation, title, or authority, but the alignment between my authentic capabilities and genuine value creation. Unlike advancement driven by political positioning or credential exploitation, my progression reflected demonstrated ability to envision and implement solutions with measurable impact across multiple domains. This authentic alignment generated sustainable energy that conventional achievement often lacks, motivation derived from meaningful contribution rather than external validation or comparative positioning. The work itself provided continuous reinforcement through tangible outcome generation, creating a virtuous cycle of capability expansion and impact enlargement. As my professional responsibilities expanded, I maintained commitment to the scholarship program established during my education. The Emerging Innovators Grant had supported its first recipients during my final semester, with 3 talented students receiving supplemental funding for projects demonstrating exceptional potential. With my increased financial capacity, I substantially expanded the program's scope and funding level, establishing a foundation structure that ensured long-term sustainability. Your commitment to developing talent regardless of financial circumstances sets an extraordinary example, the Institute's director commented during the Foundation's formal establishment, particularly coming from someone who personally navigated these challenges. The Foundation's evolution reflected my expanding vision, from individual achievement to system development, from personal success to opportunity creation. While my initial educational journey had necessarily focused on establishing independent capability, my secure professional position enabled broader impact through structural support for others facing similar challenges. This commitment extended beyond financial contribution to include active mentorship and opportunity development for scholarship recipients. I established regular engagement sessions with current and former grantees, providing both technical guidance and strategic career development support based on my professional experience. Your pathway created a blueprint for navigating unconventional development trajectories, one scholarship student commented during a mentorship session. Seeing your progression from similar starting circumstances provides practical evidence that alternative paths can yield exceptional outcomes. This feedback highlighted another dimension of impact, the demonstrative effect of visible success achieved through non-traditional pathways. By establishing concrete evidence that presumed limitations could be transcended through strategic capability development, my journey provided actionable inspiration for others facing similar constraint patterns. The Foundation's development attracted attention from both educational institutions and technology industry leaders interested in diversifying talent development pipelines. Several major technology firms established matching contribution programs that significantly expanded the Foundation's impact capacity, while academic institutions developed specialized support systems for scholarship recipients. Your initiative addresses a critical gap in our talent development ecosystem, the CEO of a leading technology firm observed during a Foundation partnership announcement. By identifying and supporting capability that traditional systems often overlook, you're expanding the available talent pool while creating opportunity for deserving individuals. This industry recognition transformed what had begun as personal commitment into systemic intervention with expanding influence across the technology education landscape. The Foundation became a platform for reconceptualizing talent identification and development methodologies, challenging conventional credential prioritization while establishing alternative evaluation frameworks focused on demonstrated capability. Throughout this professional and philanthropic expansion, my relationship with my parents continued evolving in interesting ways. Their initial tentative pride had developed into genuine admiration, though frequently expressed through practical metrics they could comprehend: my financial success, professional title, and industry recognition. "We never imagined your technology interests would create such substantial opportunities," my father acknowledged during a family dinner celebrating my 30th birthday. "Your position now exceeds anything we could have envisioned when you were starting college." While this recognition was sincere, it revealed persistent limitations in their understanding. They appreciated the outcomes of my journey, but still struggled to comprehend the fundamental capacities that had generated these results. Their pride remained somewhat externally oriented, focused on measurable achievements rather than the distinctive capabilities and perspective I had developed. This limited understanding no longer generated frustration or disappointment. I had long since moved beyond seeking validation within their perceptual framework, recognizing its inherent constraints and contextual limitations. Their approval had become a pleasant secondary effect rather than a primary motivation, appreciated when offered but unnecessary for my continued development and fulfillment. The most significant evolution in our relationship emerged through unexpected circumstances during this period. My father's accounting practice encountered substantial challenges as technological automation disrupted traditional service models, threatening the business stability he had maintained for decades. What had seemed a secure professional position suddenly faced existential threat from systemic industry transformation. The software systems handle calculations and compliance reviews that previously required extensive professional time, he explained during a rare, vulnerable conversation. Clients are questioning our value proposition when automated solutions cost a fraction of traditional services. This situation created opportunity for meaningful role reversal in our relationship. Where he had once provided guidance based on his greater experience and established perspective, I now offered insights drawn from my expertise navigating technological disruption and identifying adaptation opportunities. The most successful financial professionals are leveraging technology augmentation rather than resisting automation, I suggested, outlining potential service evolution strategies. By integrating specialized analytical capabilities with the systems rather than competing against them, you can develop hybrid service models that create distinctive value. My perspective provided actionable direction during his professional uncertainty, helping identify viable adaptation pathways that maintained relevance within evolving industry parameters. More importantly, it established a new relationship dynamic based on mutual respect for different types of knowledge and experience, transcending hierarchical positioning while creating collaborative problem-solving capacity. This experience profoundly influenced my parents' understanding of educational value and professional development trajectories. They began recognizing that conventional pathways could create vulnerability within rapidly evolving economic landscapes, while specialized capability development might generate adaptive capacity regardless of credential frameworks. Your education provided tools for continuous evolution rather than fixed position establishment, my father observed during a subsequent conversation. That adaptability seems increasingly valuable as traditional structures face accelerating disruption. This insight represented significant expansion in their conceptual framework, recognition that educational value extends beyond immediate credential acquisition to include adaptive capability development with long-term application potential. While this understanding emerged later than might have been optimal for my own educational support, it reflected meaningful growth in their perspective that might influence their guidance for others. As I approached the 5th anniversary of my graduation, I reflected on the extraordinary journey from overlooked potential to recognized innovation leadership. The path had not been direct or predictable, with multiple unexpected developments and opportunity expansions that no linear plan could have anticipated. What remained consistent throughout was the foundation of authentic capability development. the continuous expansion of distinctive strengths applied to meaningful challenges, regardless of conventional expectation frameworks. The most valuable outcome wasn't the external validation that had once seemed so essential, but the internal certainty that had developed through consistent value creation across multiple contexts. This foundation generated sustainable confidence independent of circumstance variation or perception fluctuation, a core stability that enabled continuous growth and impact expansion without requiring external reinforcement. The degree my parents had dismissed as wasteful had indeed changed everything, not through credential acquisition, but through capability development, not through meeting expectations, but through transcending them. The investment made against doubt and constraint had yielded returns that transformed not just my professional trajectory, but my fundamental relationship with potential itself. 5 years after graduation, my career at Vertex Systems had exceeded every conventional benchmark for success. My leadership of the Adaptive Interface Division had transformed it from a promising innovation center into the company's primary revenue generator. The technologies we developed had established new industry standards, with implementation across healthcare, education, and commercial applications creating substantial market impact and financial returns. My professional reputation had expanded accordingly, with industry publications featuring profiles highlighting both technical innovations and leadership methodology. I'd been invited to deliver keynote addresses at major technology conferences and participated in policy development discussions focused on adaptive technology implementation standards. These external validations complemented internal advancement, with my recent appointment to Vertex's executive leadership team, formalizing my role in company-wide strategic direction. The Emerging Innovators Foundation had similarly flourished, growing from modest beginnings into a significant force in technology education. With support from industry partners and educational institutions, the program now funded over 50 students annually across multiple technical disciplines. The Foundation's methodology for identifying and developing non-traditional talent had become a model studied by educational researchers and diversity advocates seeking more effective approaches to capability recognition. This accumulated success created a comfortable stability I had never experienced before: financial security, professional recognition, and meaningful impact across multiple domains. The constant proving and striving that had characterized my educational journey and early career had given way to established credibility and secure positioning within both organizational and industry contexts. It was precisely at this moment of apparent stability that an unexpected challenge emerged, one that would fundamentally test my values and vision in ways no previous obstacle had managed. The situation began with a routine executive leadership meeting focused on quarterly strategy development. As discussions turned to emerging market opportunities, the company's chief financial officer presented analysis suggesting significant untapped potential in government surveillance applications. The adaptive interface technologies we've developed for healthcare and education could be repurposed for monitoring and behavioral analysis systems, he explained, displaying projection models indicating substantial revenue generation. Several intelligence agencies have expressed preliminary interest in customized implementation. The proposal represented legitimate business opportunity with considerable financial upside. The technical adaptation required would be straightforward, leveraging existing architectural components to serve different application parameters. From purely commercial and technical perspectives, the direction made rational sense, expanding proven capabilities into additional implementation contexts with minimal development investment. Yet the proposed application created immediate internal conflict for me. The adaptive technologies we had developed were fundamentally designed to enhance human capability and autonomy, helping users navigate complex information environments according to their specific needs and preferences. Repurposing these systems for surveillance applications would invert this core purpose, potentially constraining individual agency rather than expanding it. This misalignment between potential application and foundational purpose triggered profound questions about leadership responsibility and technology development ethics. Was my obligation primarily to organizational growth and shareholder value, or did it extend to ensuring technologies were deployed in alignment with their intended, human-centered purpose? Did responsibility for how innovations were applied end with development, or continue through implementation contexts? The meeting concluded without definitive decisions, with agreement to conduct further market analysis before determining strategic direction. But the fundamental question remained unresolved, creating both professional challenge and personal reflection that would demand clear resolution. That evening, I reviewed the company's original mission documentation, noting language that explicitly referenced technology that expands human capability and potential as core purpose. This founding vision had attracted me to Vertex initially and guided our development priorities throughout my leadership tenure. The proposed surveillance application seemed fundamentally inconsistent with this established purpose, regardless of their commercial potential. The following week brought escalating complexity as executive discussions continued. Several leadership team members expressed enthusiasm for the new direction, citing competitive positioning and revenue diversification benefits. Others raised cautious concerns about potential reputational impacts and employee response, though primarily as implementation considerations rather than fundamental directional questions. We should carefully manage the public narrative around these applications, the marketing director suggested. Frame them as security enhancements rather than surveillance systems to minimize potential pushback. This approach to addressing ethical concerns through messaging adjustment rather than substantive evaluation deepened my discomfort with the emerging direction. It suggested viewing potential misalignment between technology purpose and application as a perception problem rather than a fundamental values question, a communication challenge rather than an ethical consideration. When asked directly for my perspective, I offered measured response focused on technical implementation complexities and potential resource allocation impacts. This temporary deflection provided necessary time for deeper consideration of both the specific situation and my broader responsibility as a technology leader. The questions involved extended beyond immediate organizational concerns to encompass fundamental issues of innovation ethics and leadership purpose. I sought counsel from several trusted mentors, including Dr. Nakamura, who had become a valued advisor throughout my professional journey. His perspective provided helpful framing for the complex considerations involved. Technology is never neutral, he observed during our conversation. Every system embeds values and priorities that shape its impact, regardless of developer intentions. The question isn't whether your technologies will influence human experience, but how that influence aligns with your core purpose and values. This insight crystallized my thinking around several key principles: that technologies inevitably shape human behavior and experience through their design and implementation parameters, that developers bear responsibility for considering these influences when determining appropriate applications, and that leadership requires maintaining alignment between organizational actions and foundational purpose beyond immediate commercial opportunities. With this clarified framework, I developed a comprehensive analysis addressing both the specific surveillance proposal and broader questions of technology application ethics. The document examined potential impacts across multiple dimensions: individual privacy and autonomy, social trust and institutional relationships, precedent establishment for future development decisions, and long-term organizational identity and purpose. When the executive team reconvened to continue strategic discussions, I presented this analysis alongside alternative growth opportunities that maintained stronger alignment with our established human enhancement mission. These alternatives included expanded healthcare applications focusing on patient autonomy, educational implementations supporting personalized learning pathways, and accessibility systems enabling broader technology engagement for users with diverse needs and capabilities. These directions leverage our core technological strengths while maintaining consistency with our foundational purpose, I explained, highlighting both commercial potential and ethical alignment. They represent substantial growth opportunities without requiring compromise of the human-centered values embedded in our development approach. The ensuing discussion revealed significant division within the leadership team. Some executives prioritized financial opportunities regardless of application context, while others recognized the importance of purpose consistency but disagreed about where appropriate boundaries should be established. The CEO ultimately deferred decision pending further analysis of various options, creating temporary resolution of immediate pressure while leaving fundamental questions unresolved. This situation forced deeper reflection on my own leadership, priorities, and professional boundaries. Would I continue with an organization potentially moving in directions inconsistent with my core values, using my position to influence decisions from within? Or would maintaining integrity require establishing absolute boundaries around technology applications I would support, even if upholding those boundaries meant leaving an organization I had helped build? These questions extended beyond immediate career implications to encompass fundamental identity considerations. Who I was as a technology leader and what principles would guide my professional contributions regardless of organizational context or conventional success metrics. After careful consideration, I drafted a comprehensive position document for the board and executive leadership. Rather than simply opposing specific applications, the document articulated a proposed ethical framework for technology development and implementation decisions, structured methodology for evaluating potential applications against established organizational purpose and human-centered values. Our technological capabilities create both opportunity and responsibility, I wrote in the introduction. The frameworks we've developed can enhance human potential or constrain individual autonomy, depending on implementation context and purpose. Maintaining alignment between our innovative capabilities and our foundational mission requires structured evaluation processes that consider impacts beyond immediate commercial metrics. The framework proposed specific evaluation criteria for potential technology applications, including enhancement of individual agency and capability, transparency of function and purpose, user control over data and interaction parameters, and consistency with established organizational values. It suggested implementation through a formal review process for proposed applications, with cross-functional evaluation teams ensuring comprehensive impact assessment. This approach transformed what could have been positioned as individual ethical objection into organizational development opportunity, evolution of decision-making processes to address increasing technological complexity and impact potential. Rather than simply resisting specific direction, it offered constructive methodology for maintaining purpose alignment throughout continuing innovation and application expansion. The board's response reflected appreciation for this constructive approach while revealing persistent tension between different conceptions of organizational purpose and leadership responsibility. Some members strongly supported the proposed framework, recognizing its potential for maintaining consistent organizational identity and values alignment. Others expressed concern about potential limitations on commercial opportunities and competitive positioning. After extended deliberation, the board approved a modified version of the proposed framework, maintaining core evaluation principles while allowing greater flexibility in application contexts under certain conditions. This represented meaningful progress in establishing structured ethical consideration within development decisions, though with less definitive boundaries than my initial proposal had suggested. This partial victory created another decision point regarding my continued leadership role. The compromise position created space for continued influence within the organization, while not establishing absolute barriers against potentially problematic applications. Remaining would provide opportunity to shape implementation of the new framework and influence specific decisions, while leaving would maintain personal ethical clarity at the cost of direct impact on organizational direction. After careful consideration, I chose to remain with conditions, specifically, establishment of an independent ethics advisory position, reporting directly to the board, and focused on framework implementation and evaluation. This structural role would provide continuing voice in application decisions while creating formal organizational capacity for ethical consideration regardless of specific leadership personnel. This resolution represented neither perfect victory nor concerning compromise, but pragmatic engagement with complex realities of organizational decision-making and technology development. It acknowledged that meaningful change often requires sustained involvement rather than definitive statements, and that ethical leadership involves building systems that institutionalize values rather than relying solely on individual influence. Throughout this challenging period, my foundation work provided valuable perspective and purpose reinforcement. The emerging innovators scholars represented technology's potential for positive impact when developed with clear human-centered purpose and implemented in contexts that enhanced individual capability. Their innovative projects and career aspirations consistently demonstrated alignment between technological capability and human advancement, exactly the integration I sought to maintain within commercial applications. This experience fundamentally expanded my understanding of leadership responsibility in technological development. Beyond creating innovative capabilities or ensuring commercial success, authentic leadership required maintaining alignment between technological potential and human-centered purpose, ensuring that expanding capabilities served meaningful enhancement, rather than creating new constraints or vulnerabilities. The resolution achieved wasn't perfect or permanent. The tensions between commercial opportunity, technological capability, and ethical application would require ongoing engagement and evolution. But the frameworks established created structured space for these considerations within organizational decision processes, institutionalizing ethical evaluation rather than leaving it dependent on individual advocacy. This outcome reflected important evolution in my leadership approach, from proving individual capability to establishing sustainable systems, from personal achievement to structural development. The most meaningful impact wouldn't come through isolated decisions or individual positions, but through creating organizational structures and decision frameworks that embedded ethical consideration within standard processes, regardless of specific personnel or circumstances. This transition from individual capability demonstration to system development represented natural progression in authentic leadership growth. From establishing personal credibility to creating sustainable structures that transcended individual contribution. The most significant leadership legacy wouldn't be specific technological innovations or commercial successes, but the decision frameworks and organizational values that would guide development long after any individual's tenure concluded. The investment my parents had initially dismissed as wasteful had indeed changed everything. Not just through the specific capabilities developed or positions achieved, but through fundamental evolution in understanding how technological innovation and leadership responsibility intersect in creating systems that genuinely enhance human potential, rather than simply generating commercial success or technical advancement. The professional challenges around ethical technology development had consumed my attention for months, creating distance from family matters that had once dominated my emotional landscape. This natural separation reflected healthy evolution. My identity and focus now centered on current purpose and contribution, rather than historical dynamics and validation seeking. A sudden call from my mother disrupted this established distance. Her voice carried uncharacteristic urgency as she explained the situation. My father had experienced a serious health crisis, a heart attack followed by complications that required extensive hospitalization and would demand significant lifestyle adjustments moving forward. The doctors say he'll need several months of recovery before returning to work, she explained, anxiety evident in her tone. And even then, he'll need to reduce his schedule substantially. The practice is already struggling with client retention, and this extended absence. Her voice trailed off, the financial implications hanging unspoken between us. The situation created complex intersections of past patterns and current realities. My parents had never directly asked for financial assistance before. Our relationship had maintained careful separation between professional domains despite the evolution of mutual respect in recent years. This unspoken boundary had preserved important independence for all parties, allowing relationship development without creating complicated dependency dynamics. Now, circumstances were forcing reconsideration of these established parameters. My father's health crisis created legitimate need, while my substantial financial capacity made assistance entirely feasible. The question wasn't about ability, but about appropriate engagement. How to provide necessary support while maintaining healthy relationship boundaries and addressing underlying issues that had shaped our historical interactions. "I'll come visit this weekend," I responded, recognizing the situation required direct engagement rather than distant management. "We can discuss the situation thoroughly and develop a comprehensive approach." The family home appeared smaller than memory suggested as I arrived that Saturday morning, a common perceptual shift reflecting both physical reality and psychological evolution. My mother greeted me with visible relief, her usually careful appearance showing signs of the strain these difficult weeks had created. My father's condition, while serious, showed encouraging improvement. His hospital room featured the expected medical monitoring equipment alongside unexpected personal touches, books on technological innovation I had recommended during recent conversations, industry publications featuring my interviews and profiles, even a framed photograph from the Emerging Innovators Foundation's recent scholarship ceremony. These elements revealed meaningful evolution in his engagement with my professional world, genuine interest replacing the polite acknowledgement that had characterized earlier years. This shift had developed gradually through our conversations about his practice's technological adaptation challenges, creating connection points that transcended our historical patterns of limited understanding. Our initial conversation focused on medical specifics and recovery expectations, necessary pragmatic discussion that established shared understanding of the situation's parameters. As these immediate topics reached natural conclusion, the underlying financial implications emerged as the essential next consideration. "The practice has been experiencing revenue challenges for several quarters," my father acknowledged, professional pride temporarily yielding to practical necessity. "The technology integration initiatives we discussed have shown promising early results, but implementation requires both time and capital investment, resources now complicated by my health situation." My mother added detail to this assessment. "The medical insurance covers most treatment costs, but the extended income interruption creates significant concerns for both personal finances and practice sustainability. Several major clients have already indicated they may need alternative arrangements during your father's absence." This transparent sharing represented significant evolution from the careful image management that had characterized their approach during my youth and early adulthood. Where previous financial discussions had maintained appearance of unquestioned stability and capacity, this conversation acknowledged genuine vulnerability and limitation, a truthfulness that enabled authentic engagement rather than performance maintenance. The situation presented opportunity for meaningful support that addressed immediate needs while potentially transforming underlying patterns. Rather than simply providing financial assistance, a straightforward solution that would resolve immediate pressure while potentially reinforcing problematic dynamics, I suggested a more comprehensive approach addressing both short-term challenges and long-term sustainability. "I'd like to propose a structured intervention with several components," I began, outlining a framework that reflected my professional experience with systemic challenges rather than symptomatic responses. First, establishing stability funding that addresses immediate personal financial needs during the recovery period. Second, developing an interim management solution for the practice that maintains client relationships and service delivery. Third, accelerating the technology integration initiatives to establish sustainable competitive positioning once full operations resume. This approach framed the situation as temporary challenge requiring pragmatic solution rather than fundamental failure deserving judgment, an important distinction that preserved dignity while addressing practical realities. It offered comprehensive support without creating dependency, focusing on capacity development rather than limitation management. My father's response reflected both relief and remaining professional pride. The financial stability support would certainly address immediate concerns, he acknowledged. But the practice management during absence presents significant challenges. Client relationships built over decades rely on personal knowledge and trust that isn't easily transferred to temporary coverage. This observation highlighted legitimate implementation complexities while providing natural opening for the more transformative elements of my proposed approach. The technological adaptation challenges his practice faced mirrored broader industry evolution questions I had helped numerous organizations navigate, creating opportunity for meaningful contribution beyond financial resources. What if we approached this as accelerated implementation of the technology integration strategy we've discussed previously? I suggested. The client management systems we've developed at Vertex have application potential for accounting practices, transitioning toward advisory services rather than traditional compliance work. This situation could create opportunity to implement those systems with dedicated support, establishing new service delivery models that reduce dependency on single provider availability. This reframing shifted the conversation from crisis management to strategic opportunity, addressing immediate challenges while establishing foundation for long-term sustainability, regardless of my father's eventual capacity level. It positioned technology as enabler of business model evolution rather than threat to established practice, creating constructive engagement rather than reluctant adaptation. Over the following hours, this conceptual framework evolved into pragmatic implementation. Plan. The financial component would establish structured support, addressing both personal needs and practice investment requirements, with clear parameters and defined duration to maintain appropriate boundaries. The technology integration would proceed through formal consulting arrangement between Vertex Systems and my father's practice, ensuring professional implementation rather than personal favor. Most significantly, we established collaborative leadership structure for the transition period, engaging Ethan's business implementation expertise alongside my technology integration experience and my father's industry-specific knowledge. This approach created meaningful family collaboration based on complementary capabilities rather than hierarchical positioning, transcending historical patterns while addressing legitimate current needs. This approach provides immediate stability while establishing sustainable direction regardless of my eventual return capacity, my father observed as our planning concluded. It represents comprehensive solution rather than stopgap measure, addressing fundamental business evolution challenges rather than simply bridging temporary disruption. His assessment reflected genuine appreciation for the structured methodology rather than mere acceptance of necessary assistance, recognition of knowledge, contribution beyond financial capacity. This shift from hierarchical positioning to mutual expertise acknowledgement represented meaningful evolution in our relationship dynamics, creating foundation for authentic collaboration rather than complicated dependency. Implementation began immediately, with formal agreements establishing clear parameters for both financial support and professional services. The technology integration proceeded with dedicated resources from Vertex Systems, while Ethan's firm provided implementation. Consulting focused on organizational adaptation and client relationship management during the transition period. This structured approach yielded results exceeding initial projections. The immediate stability funding addressed financial pressures, creating space for thoughtful implementation rather than reactive management. The technology integration established new service delivery capabilities that reduce dependency on my father's personal availability while enhancing value proposition for existing clients. Most significantly, the collaborative leadership model transformed historical family dynamics in unexpected ways. Working together toward shared objectives with complementary capabilities created experiences that fundamentally disrupted established perception patterns. My parents witnessed directly the professional knowledge and leadership methodologies I had developed, while I gained deeper appreciation for the industry-specific expertise they had cultivated throughout their careers. I never fully understood the systematic thinking you bring to problem-solving, my father acknowledged during an implementation review session. Watching you approach our practice challenges with this structured methodology reveals capabilities I simply didn't recognize previously. This direct experience accomplished what years of external validation had never fully achieved: genuine understanding of my specific capabilities beyond abstract acknowledgement of general success. Seeing my professional methodologies applied to familiar challenges created concrete comprehension that transcended limited perceptual frameworks and historical expectations. Similarly, collaborative engagement with my father's industry-specific knowledge expanded my appreciation for expertise developed through different educational and professional pathways. His understanding of client relationship dynamics and regulatory compliance requirements represented sophisticated knowledge not captured in conventional academic frameworks. Expertise developed through practical experience rather than formal instruction. This mutual recognition created foundation for genuine respect, transcending historical patterns of hierarchical evaluation or comparative positioning. We began relating as individuals with distinctive knowledge domains and complementary capabilities, rather than family roles defined by predetermined expectations or traditional status arrangements. The practice transformation produced remarkable results beyond relationship evolution. The technology integration established new service delivery models that enhanced client value while reducing operational vulnerability to individual availability. The systematic knowledge management approach captured my father's expertise in reproducible frameworks that maintained relationship value while enabling delegation of implementation components. As my father's health improved and partial return to professional engagement became feasible, these systems enabled sustainable contribution aligned with medical recommendations rather than forcing difficult choices between health requirements and practice viability. The technological infrastructure supported flexible engagement patterns that maintained client relationships while respecting necessary limitations. The systems we've implemented have transformed how I conceptualize practice management, my father reflected during a progress review 6 months into implementation. What began as response to health limitations has established capabilities that enhance service delivery regardless of my personal capacity. The constraint became catalyst for evolution that might otherwise have been indefinitely deferred. This observation highlighted powerful principle applicable beyond our specific situation. Limitations often create opportunities for transformation that comfort never necessitates. The practice constraints imposed by health circumstances had forced implementation of changes that competitive pressures alone hadn't sufficiently motivated, despite their clear advantages and eventual necessity. The collaboration had additional unexpected impacts on Ethan's professional trajectory. His involvement with the technology implementation expanded his consulting firm's capabilities in important directions, establishing expertise in digital transformation that distinguished his services within an increasingly competitive market. The practical experience gained through our family project translated directly into enhanced client offerings that generated substantial new business development. This collaboration has transformed how I approach technology integration consulting, he acknowledged during a joint client presentation. The direct implementation experience with systems you've developed provides practical insights that purely theoretical understanding could never supply. This professional evolution influenced our sibling relationship in meaningful ways. replacing historical competitive positioning with genuine appreciation for complementary capabilities. We began engaging as collaborative professionals with distinct expertise domains rather than comparative family members with predetermined hierarchical arrangement. The comprehensive intervention ultimately transcended its immediate objectives, establishing both practical systems and relationship patterns with sustained impact beyond the specific circumstances that necessitated their development. The practice emerged stronger than its pre-crisis position, with enhanced service capabilities and more sustainable operational models regardless of individual availability or capacity. More significantly, our family relationships evolved through practical collaboration rather than abstract reconciliation efforts, working together toward shared objectives with complementary capabilities, created experiences that disrupted established patterns more effectively than any intentional relationship intervention could have accomplished. The concrete challenges demanded authentic engagement that bypassed historical dynamics and created new interaction foundations based on current realities rather than accumulated perceptions. The investment my parents had initially dismissed as wasteful had indeed changed everything, not through vindication or reversal of judgment, but through creating capabilities that transformed limitation into opportunity when unexpected challenges emerged. The knowledge and methodologies developed through my educational and professional journey had provided resources for navigating complex challenges in contexts extending far beyond conventional expectations or predetermined pathways. This outcome represented the most meaningful return on investment, not measured through comparative achievement or external validation, but through capacity to create genuine value when meaningful challenges presented themselves. The education that had once been questioned as impractical had developed precisely the practical capabilities required to transform constraint into opportunity when traditional approaches proved insufficient. The successful transformation of my father's accounting practice created ripple effects extending far beyond our immediate family situation. The integrated technology solutions we'd implemented represented a viable model for similar professional service firms facing parallel challenges, established practices needing to evolve beyond traditional service delivery methods without sacrificing the relationship value developed over decades. This intersection of established professional expertise with technological enhancement capabilities addressed a significant market gap. Most available technology solutions focused either on complete practice replacement, digital platforms eliminating traditional professional roles, or simple efficiency improvements that failed to address fundamental business model evolution. Our approach instead created augmentation systems that enhanced professional capabilities while preserving essential relationship elements and specialized expertise. The implementation model you've developed has application potential well beyond our specific situation, my father observed during a quarterly review meeting. Many of my colleagues face identical challenges without access to similar transformation resources. His insight highlighted an opportunity I hadn't initially considered: the potential to formalize our implementation approach into structured methodology, applicable across similar professional contexts. The technology components already existed within Vertex Systems' capabilities, while the implementation framework had been refined through our practical experience with my father's practice. After careful consideration and consultation with both Vertex leadership and my father's professional network, I developed a proposal for a specialized division focused on professional service transformation. Unlike traditional enterprise technology implementations that prioritized standardization, this approach would emphasize knowledge capture and relationship enhancement, preserving the distinctive value of established professional expertise while creating technology-enabled delivery models less dependent on individual availability. The proposed division would establish structured transformation methodology replicable across professional service contexts, I explained to Vertex's executive committee. Initial focus on accounting practices leverages our existing implementation experience, with potential expansion to legal, financial advisory, and specialized consulting domains facing similar evolution challenges. The proposal received enthusiastic approval, with resource allocation exceeding initial requests based on recognized market potential. The projected revenue opportunities were substantial, but equally important was the alignment with Vertex's core mission of human capability enhancement, creating technology that augmented professional expertise rather than simply replacing established roles. Development of the specialized division proceeded rapidly, with my father serving as principal implementation advisor, alongside a team of experienced professionals from both technology and accounting backgrounds. We established a comprehensive methodology addressing both technical integration and organizational adaptation components, recognizing that successful transformation required attention to human factors beyond system functionality. The technical capabilities matter significantly less than adoption methodology and integration approach, I emphasized during team development sessions. Our competitive advantage comes from implementation process that respects existing expertise while enhancing delivery capability, not from technical features alone. This philosophy shaped both our solution architecture and market positioning, differentiating our offerings from conventional automation approaches that often generated resistance from established professionals concerned about expertise devaluation. Instead, we positioned technology as an enhancement tool that elevated professional capabilities while eliminating routine components that consumed capacity without creating distinctive value. The initial market response exceeded projections, with dozens of established accounting practices engaging our services within the first 6 months of formal operation. The implementation results consistently demonstrated significant impact metrics. Practice revenue increases averaging 32% within 12 months. Professional capacity enhancement, allowing 40% greater client service delivery with existing staffing levels, and substantial improvement in both client retention and professional satisfaction measures. These quantifiable outcomes created compelling evidence supporting our transformation approach, establishing foundation for expansion into additional professional domains. Legal practices, financial advisory firms, and specialized consulting. Organizations began expressing interest in adaptation of our methodology to their specific contexts, creating growth opportunities that extended well beyond our initial market focus. The division's rapid success created unexpected personal decision point regarding my professional focus. The established leadership role at Vertex Systems represented continuing advancement along my existing trajectory, while the emerging transformation practice offered opportunity to build something distinctive addressing significant market need. Both paths presented compelling advantages and growth potential with different emphasis and impact focus. After careful consideration and consultation with trusted advisors, I made a decision that surprised many observers. I would transition from my executive position to focus exclusively on developing the professional transformation division as semi-autonomous entity within Vertex's broader organization. This choice prioritized building something new, addressing specific market need, over managing established operations, regardless of conventional career advancement metrics. Your decision prioritizes impact potential over status considerations, Dr. Nakamura observed when I shared my direction. This represents mature leadership perspective focused on contribution value rather than positional advancement. His assessment highlighted important principle that had increasingly guided my professional choices, prioritizing meaningful impact, aligned with authentic capabilities over conventional success metrics or external validation measures. The Transformation Division represented opportunity to create significant value precisely because it leveraged my distinctive perspective at intersection of technological capability and professional practice evolution. The division's continued growth confirmed this assessment, with expansion accelerating beyond initial projections, as our implementation methodology demonstrated consistent results across diverse professional contexts. Within 18 months, We had established successful transformations across more than 200 professional practices spanning multiple service domains, with documented impact metrics creating compelling evidence supporting our approach. What began as response to specific family challenge had evolved into substantial business operation with significant market impact, addressing previously unmet need at intersection of technological evolution and professional service delivery. The distinctive value emerged from our integrated perspective, combining deep understanding of both technological capabilities and professional practice realities, knowledge domains typically separated in conventional implementation approaches. This unexpected trajectory created interesting parallel with my original educational journey. Just as my college choice had prioritized specific capability development over conventional prestige metrics, my professional evolution now emphasized distinctive impact potential over traditional advancement paths. Both decisions prioritized authentic alignment with specific opportunities over generalized status considerations, choices that appeared unconventional by standard evaluation frameworks but produced exceptional outcomes within appropriate contexts. The transformation division's impact extended beyond commercial success to include meaningful evolution in professional identity preservation during technological transition periods. Unlike conventional disruption narratives that positioned established professionals as outdated resources requiring replacement, our approach emphasized expertise enhancement and delivery model evolution, preserving the essential value while transforming implementation mechanisms. Your methodology respects the knowledge foundation developed through decades of practice while creating sustainable delivery models for changing environments, commented the managing partner of a 75-year-old legal firm following successful implementation. This preserves institutional wisdom that would otherwise be lost during technological transition. This insight highlighted deeper purpose underlying our practical methodology, creating bridges between established expertise and evolving delivery, requirements that maintained valuable knowledge while enabling necessary adaptation. The approach recognized that genuine innovation often involves integration of existing wisdom with new capabilities, rather than wholesale replacement of established understanding. The division's continued development benefited substantially from my brother's involvement as implementation strategist, focusing on organizational change components. His expertise in managing client relationship transitions during transformation periods complemented the technical implementation capabilities, creating comprehensive methodology, addressing both system functionality and adoption challenges. The technical capabilities enable transformation, but the organizational adaptation determines success, Ethan observed during strategy development for a multi-office implementation. Professional identity and client relationships represent complex, human factors that require structured transition management beyond system functionality. His perspective enhanced our methodology in crucial ways, expanding implementation approach to address psychological and relational components often overlooked in technology-centered transformations. This integrated approach addressing both technical and human factors created distinctive competitive advantage while delivering more consistent implementation outcomes. Our professional collaboration continued strengthening our personal relationship, replacing historical competition with genuine appreciation for complementary capabilities. The sustained implementation partnership created shared experiences that developed mutual respect based on demonstrated expertise rather than familial positioning, establishing authentic connection independent of childhood dynamics or parental evaluation frameworks. Working together has transformed how I understand your capabilities, Ethan acknowledged during a successful implementation celebration. Experiencing your methodology application directly creates appreciation impossible through abstract description or external recognition. This evolution reflected important principle about relationship transformation, that authentic connection often develops through shared experience rather than intentional reconciliation efforts. Our professional collaboration had created natural, Context for genuine engagement that bypassed historical patterns while establishing new interaction foundation based on current capabilities rather than accumulated perceptions. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.